Happy Australia Day, Herd. We're going to find out what the hell that means. Apparently, there are other countries somewhere else. Welcome back to another episode. I'm joined by our unicorn chef, Michelle, today. Wave Michelle. She is calling us all the way from down under. Not really. You're up in Virginia, right? Somewhere?
Yeah, I'm in Manassas, so not far from probably a lot of you.
Sounds like just as close as Australia actually is. So we love to see what you make at home. So don't forget to share your own things, #UnicornChef. And since we like to push good things back into the world, Michelle, what is tonight's charity?
Tonight's charity is actually Tunnel to Towers. It's a charity that is actually set up for emergency responders and veterans after the 9/11, episode. They do a lot of fantastic work in helping not only survivors, but also families to sort out mortgages, provide some of the survivors with homes that are tailored to their disabilities. It's a fantastic charity. It's very, very easy to donate to, and for something as minimal as $15 a month, you can actually give to it on a monthly basis and make a huge difference to a lot of people's lives. So that's the charity for tonight. As you know, Bryson, I'm a veteran myself. And as you and I know, we both lived through that period. And that is a charity that is actually quite close to my heart.
And how do people donate?
You can find the links on the website or go to www.tunnel2towers.com. And they make it very, very easy for you to contribute to make those veterans and survivors' lives much easier.
All right. So what are you drinking tonight?
Well, normally, as you know, I'm a bit of a bourbon girl, but it is Australia Day. So I had to actually bring an import in, which is Foster's. So what I will say to all of you out there is that Foster's is actually not a beer that Australians fully embrace. It's kind of, I don't know, maybe a bit like a bud that you might export. Australia's favourite beer is actually Victoria Bitter, otherwise known as the VB or the very best. But Foster's was all I could get from the local shops. And seeing that the embassy is closed down, my normal connection to hook me up with VB was unavailable. But yes, Foster's. And for those of you who think that's a mighty big can, yes, it is. It's something in the order of almost 26 ounces. So big can of beer, not the best, but certainly something that is marketed to Americans as something that Australians drink. So to make your dreams come true, here we go. Mm-hmm. And Bree, what are you drinking?
The finest Arlington County tap water.
All right. Well, I guess over to me now, is it?
Over to you. Take us through tonight's dish to celebrate Oz Day.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess, you know, we're going, it's Aussie Day. It was obviously Australia Day yesterday. They're 14 hours ahead of us. It's also summer there, so it's a massive celebration of people playing cricket on the beach, putting, you know, like lamb chops on the barbie, swimming in the ocean. There's normally a huge fireworks display that goes off over Sydney Harbour Bridge and the Opera House, and everyone's out on their boats on the harbour. It's a fantastic time. It's a massive celebration in Australia, and Australia Day essentially came from when Captain Arthur Phillip from the United Kingdom, or from England, first landed in Australia in 1788, and he planted the Union Jack in Botany Bay. Now, Botany Bay obviously still exists today. And it's one of the, you know, sort of major tourist sites. But that was kind of the first time in 1788 that Australia was essentially discovered and claimed by the UK. Our history develops from there. They brought a lot of convicts out to Australia, and I think, you know, who won? Best beaches in the world, awesome temperature and climate. I know who the winners are for any of those of you who've probably been to the UK. It's normally rainy over coast, and most people are suffering from SAD, or the seasonal, affective disorder. So I actually think those people who got transported out to Australia as convicts were the winners. Over the last, 200 years or so, we've managed to breed a hugely multicultural society that has welcomed people from all over the world. We actually have one of the biggest Greek populations outside Mykonos in Greece, and that is located in Darwin in the Northern Territory. We have a huge population of Italians, Vietnamese, Thais, Filipinos, people from all over the world. And I think that's actually contributed to Australia's quite eclectic culinary offerings that we have. I mean, a lot of people often say, what's a really authentic Australian dish? And to be honest, like I used to struggle about what was, classified as an authentic Aussie dish. And the dish that we're going to cook tonight really is something that has been a staple. It was a staple through me growing up as a kid. It's a staple in nearly every tuck shop. What's the equivalent here? Like a snack shop that you would buy something from at school. It's something that tradies and electricians would have for mornos or morning tea or afternoon tea. It's something that's served during parties, hens parties, kids parties, anything like that. And that is actually the sausage roll. As I said, Australia has quite an eclectic culinary, sort of background because of all the influences of all the different countries that have come to Oz. But the sausage roll is one thing that shines through, and it is probably one of the things that most Aussies miss when they're not home in Australia. So tonight we're going to cook the sausage roll. I'm going to give you, kind of a few options for it to adjust for your taste buds. I know that Bryson will more than likely and has already prepped some options. But the sausage roll is essentially a line of spiced meat. You can use pork, you can use lamb, you can use beef. It's encased in a phyllo pastry and cooked in the oven. The phyllo pastry rises, it's very crunchy, and then there's this gorgeous, beautiful, spiced meat inside that we serve with tomato sauce, otherwise known as ketchup here in the US. It's a great finger food, good at the footy, good at the cricket, and pretty much good everywhere else. So I know that we did post the recipe online for you. So I guess, let's get cooking. So what you should have, I think, from your recipe, the first thing we're going to do is finely chop a small brown onion. Lots of you, probably have your own ways about chopping your onions. But I think if I could give you any advice whatsoever, it's to get the onion as fine as possible, because what we will be doing is only cooking the sausage roll for around about 20 to 25 minutes. So the finer dice that onion is, the better. So let's just get ahead and, get on doing that. I don't know actually how many of you may have actually visited Australia or, dare I say, have the pleasure of knowing any Aussies, or that you actually know much about Australia at all. So as part of the show, I thought I would, maybe drop a bit of knowledge on you about Oz. I think one of the things is that a lot of people don't know about Australia is that in terms of land mass, we're actually only slightly smaller than the US. I think it's something like 2.9 million square miles to the US's 3.4 million square miles. So a lot of people, I always used to find it funny, when I would speak to people and they would be like, oh, I'm going to go to Australia and I'm going to, see everything within a couple of weeks. And I'm like, really? Really? Do you actually sort of really appreciate the size of the country? Because that would essentially be like driving from New York to LA, then down to Florida and then visiting Texas. So quite a bit of land travel. So that is one of the things about Oz that not a lot of people have actually thought about. Australia is, super, super diverse as well in terms of we have desert, we have rainforests, we have some of the most beautiful beaches in the world, and we actually have some fantastic ski locations as well. And in terms of how much snow we get a year on a good year, we actually have more snow fall in Australia over our snow season than the whole of Switzerland does. And that's purely because of landmass size. So, I guess a couple of interesting tidbits there. What else can I tell you about Oz? There must be some questions. Bryson, you must have some questions.
Questions about Australia. So I've heard that Sydney is not that interesting.
Sydney is actually the capital city of my home state. I grew up in a very, very small country town in central New South Wales, of which Sydney is the capital city. Sydney is one of those iconic cities where, most people, if they were going to think about Australia, they would think about the Sydney Harbour Bridge, or they would think about the Opera House, or the beautiful harbour that it lies on. It's retained a lot of its natural and original authenticity in the Rocks area. It's a vibrant city. There's, it's kind of the centre of a lot of the cultural activities that go in Oz, and it's actually really conveniently located. It has some of the best beaches like Bondi Beach. Many of you would have heard about Bondi Beach, which has some of the best waves and the best surfing for visitors and otherwise. To keep you up to date with the recipe, we've finally chopped that onion. We're just going to put it into a bowl. And along with that, I've actually got some sweet Italian sausage meat. Now, you can actually spice this up. You can use the hot Italian sausage meat. If you're feeling super lazy and you don't want to do anything, you can actually also just buy the breakfast sausages and lay them down in the pastry cases. I kind of like to use the sausage meat. It allows you to add a few more spices and just get a little bit creative with it. I did make some hot Italian sausage rolls earlier on today to show you what the final product looks like. But all we're going to do is chop that onion and put the meat in with the onion. The next thing that we're actually going to do is take just a small bowl with your piece of bread and just cover that bread with some beef stock. Now, the purpose of actually doing this is to have the bread act as a binder and add a little bit of moisture to the mince as you mix it. So as you can see, I've just sort of poured over the stock. It steeps in the bread. You don't have to leave it there for a long period of time. Just let it soak that up. And whilst you're doing that, with your meat mix, actually just take a little bit of salt and pepper and season to taste on there. At this point, you could feel free to add a little bit of fennel, add a few chili flakes if you like, or oregano, any seasonings that you think, would be, suitable or suitable to your palate, the things that you actually like. Now, I actually have this weird thing where I really hate touching raw meat with my hands. So I'm just going to slip on a pair of gloves to mix this up. Now, what you should have done, if you have not already, is just preheat the oven to 425 degrees Fahrenheit. It's a big thing, like in Australia we use Celsius. So me getting my brain around the difference between Fahrenheit and Celsius sometimes takes a little bit of time. But, if we're in Oz, we'd be preheating the oven to around about 185 for this. But here we're going to 425. Make sure it's nice and hot, because what you want to be able to do is when you put that phyllo pastry in, have that really hot heat hit the pastry and make those lovely layers rise, and that's how you'll get a beautiful crisp sausage roll. So just slightly mix your onion and your seasonings and your meat, and then we're next going to just pop the bread in with that little bit of moisture, and then we're just going to work that through the mixture. Get that really well combined in there. And as I said, the bread really acts as a binder in there for you. Don't worry if it's a little bit, the mixture's a little bit wet. It will actually, it'll be fine. So just get that really well mixed. And then what we'll do is we'll set that aside whilst we get our pastry ready. Now, for those of you,
this is where I did it a little differently. So I chopped some green cabbage that I had blanched beforehand and diced carrots. So I got a little bit of vegetables in mine.
Yeah, and that's actually a really good point, because I have on occasion just made vegetarian sausage rolls where I've used like a bean mix, and I've grated zucchini and grated carrot and grated onion and mixed that in and made a vegetarian version of the sausage roll. And believe me, I actually fed it to quite a few of my friends, and they didn't know it didn't have meat in it. So it's actually a really flexible and easy recipe, and it's a good one, I think, if you have kids and they kind of want to experiment in the kitchen and do a few things. It's a nice easy recipe, not too messy either. So what we're going to do is we're just going to get the pastry ready. So I just have a little bit of plain flour, plain self-raising, it doesn't matter, and just to kind of put that on the bench top. And this is really just to stop your pastry from sticking, because you're going to do a bit of a slight roll to get a little bit of extra with the pastry to roll up the meat inside it. So I've got a little bit of flour down. Next, I'm just going to hopefully successfully pull out my pastry. All right, here we go. So the recipe that I gave you will have enough filling, so sausage filling, to fill 2 pastry sheets. But just for the purpose of this evening, I'm just going to do 1, and you just kind of adjust that mix. So just pull your pastry out. And mine is a little soft, so I've got to work a little bit to pull it out. And I think, the puff pastry works the best for this. I've never really tried it with phyllo pastry at all, but this kind of works the best. So just kind of, flatten it out a little bit. And what you can do if you just want to make like small bite-sized sausage rolls, as you roll the pastry out, you'll see that it's folded in 3. So what you can actually do is you can cut down those 3 lines to make nice little bite-sized sausage rolls. So, initially let's just do that. Make those cuts down the line. And then the next step that we're going to do is actually start to fill the casing. Now, I'll give you a little bit of advice here. Do not overfill them because the meat will slightly expand with the pastry as you cook it. But the best way is to, take maybe a handful, maybe about, this much, and then just sort of start to form it up and place it. I'm not too sure if you guys can see this. Hopefully you can. Place it close to one edge of the pastry and just form it into like a sausage-like shape. And then just continue to do that until you get the sausage filling all the way down the long edge of the pastry. So I'm just going to finish up one here just to give you a bit of a look about what it looks like. So hopefully you can see that. You can see that I've got the meat mixture in a line down the long edge, and then all you're going to do is pick that pastry up on the edge that you've got the meat and roll it over, encasing all of the sausage meat inside, and just keep rolling till you close the edge up. You should have maybe a little overlay of round about 1/2 inch on that. And then all you're going to do is just slightly seal it with your fingers and then place it on your cooking tray with that cut edge down. So as the sausage roll cooks, that closure will be on the bottom there. So what we'll continue to do is just fill the other 2 remaining slices of pastry. Now, what you can actually do here, if you wanted to get a little bit of, a little bit creative, you might want to put a little bit of caramelized onion inside your sausage rolls. You might want to add, just maybe, some kind of spice or chutney in there just to add a little bit more flavor as you cook it. So your sausages, like the mixture that you have, it should be maybe round about 1 inch wide and maybe 1/2 inch high. As I said, you don't want to kind of overstuff it, and you should just be looking to shape that, with your fingers into, a sausage-looking, shape. Now, as I said, the mixture you have here, you will probably be able to make 6 separate rolls. I've just done 3 tonight, like in terms of, timing for us to get this done. But same rules apply. By the time these cook, and then, you let them cool, and then you cut them, there is enough here to, feed in terms of snacks. I would say 8 to 10 people in terms of, bite-sized nibblies. So again, when you roll it up, just make sure that you know, use a little pinch to close the bottom of that pastry off. And then when you lay it on your baking tray, just make sure that that seal is at the bottom, because the weight of the sausage as it cooks will ensure that, you know, you've got that closure and there won't be any kind of, you know, explosions in terms of, you know, the pastry not being able to hold the contents.
I'm really excited to see these in about 25 minutes.
Yeah, like it's actually like that. They are a great kind of little snack. You know, like it's always good as an Aussie when people say, what is in a sausage roll? And we say, well, it's just roux tail. A few people have asked me that before. But as I said, you know, you can be quite creative. We've used sort of pork mince here tonight. You can use lamb mince, and this is a fantastic thing. If you use lamb mince, you can put a whole lot of different spices in and then serve it with something like a tzatziki or a hummus dip. You can really, you know, fill that sausage casing with a whole lot of Mediterranean flavors. And again, that's kind of, you know, embracing some of the cultural, you know, experiences that have come to Australia. We're doing just the standard Aussie sausage roll tonight. I mean, I grew up on these things, and whilst these are snack sizes, a normal sausage roll in Oz, and I did make some earlier today that I'm going to show you when we get to that point. You know, they're a lot bigger. They're a lot more substantial, and you could have one of those specifically just as a meal with a bit of a salad on the side. But again, you know, for me, sausage rolls, they're fantastic with tomato sauce or barbecue sauce or a bit of chili sauce and a beer while you watch the footy.
It seems like a good name for these would have been roux tails. Instead of calling them sausage rolls, just call them roux tails.
With roux tails? Yeah, for sure,
Yeah.
for sure. I'm telling you though, kangaroo meat's a little bit hard to come by here. But yeah, so, you know, I guess in terms of, you know, what we're doing, you know, with Oz in Australia Day, as I said, it's a massive celebration, but big celebrations like that don't often come without some controversy. Obviously, 1788, that was 12 years after 1776 here in the US. Australia Day was certainly, you know, up until probably around about 20 years ago, seen as the day to celebrate being Australian, no matter what nationality you came from. Today, you know, it's there's a lot of discussion around the fact that when you know, Captain Arthur Phillip arrived in 1788, there were Indigenous Australians in Australia. And it's sort of been seen that that was, you know, the English taking over the Indigenous nations of the world. So Australia is kind of in this discussion right now about should Australia Day continue to exist? Should another day be nominated where we actually celebrate all Australians, not just white and Indigenous? But it's kind of, you know, it's kind of one of those things. It's an ongoing discussion. Certainly I know as an Aussie, it doesn't matter what colour you are. It's the fact that you're an Aussie. You know, and even if that means you don't quite speak with the Australian accent, if you identify as Australian, that's, you know, what is the important thing. So what we've got now is, I think we should have, or some of you should have 3, or if not, 6 of your sausage rolls. At this point, I like to kind of, you know, like put a little bit of milk, or you could actually mix this with a little bit of egg and put egg on top of the pastry casing. So you can just brush that on there, and this obviously just helps to brown the top of your sausage rolls. And, you know, make them look, you know, super appetizing when they come out. Be a little bit generous. As we know, the heat in the oven is pretty high. So don't be too worried if you put a little bit too much on. With my sausage rolls, I kind of like to have a mix of both sesame and or fennel seeds on top. I think it just gives that, not only does it make them good to look at, but also adds a little bit of flavor. Normally, I don't use white sesame seeds. I actually use black sesame seeds, but that has actually, I wasn't able to find any today in my local Giant. So we're just kind of going with the white sesame seeds. And because this is the sweet mix, I'm just going to, the sweet mix Italian meat, I'm just going to put a few extra fennel seeds on top. Now, again, make this your own. If you wanted to put a few chili flakes on top, do it. Make it your own. These are like, little pillows of beautiful sausagey goodness. So fill them up with the things that make you happy. So what we're going to do, once you've sort of popped a little bit of milk on top to help them brown, you've put, whatever seasonings you want on top. As I said, I've used sesame seed and fennel. What we're going to do is we're just going to pop them in the oven at that 425. I always like to put mine on the middle shelf just so I get that circulation of heat around them. And you're going to cook them for 25 minutes. Now, for those out there of you who have a convection oven, just keep an eye on them around about maybe 20 minutes. But if you've just got a standard oven, 25 minutes should be fine. You'll start to see that pastry rise and puff up and then brown very nicely. But between the 20 and the 25-minute mark, they'll be perfect. At that point, you can take them out of the oven, let them rest for a few minutes because they will be atomically hot. And then all you do is you can cut them up into bite-sized pieces and you can serve them with tomato sauce, ketchup, a barbecue sauce, a sweet chili sauce goes very, very well. And, they're fantastic to eat. But what I will do is show you a bit of an example about what they look like when they come out of the oven. So these are some of the sausage rolls that I made earlier today, and these are a larger version than what we put in the oven before. So this is actually using 2 widths of the pastry. So how we cut it into 3, I just used, like 2 folds and then increase the sausage mix. And this is done with the hot Italian sausage with a little bit more chili in and then some sesame seeds on top. So as you can see, these are quite the size, but they come out, they're fantastic, as I said, with a bit of a salad on the side, or how I'm going to eat them tonight with a bit of, tomato sauce and a beer. They're really good finger food. And I'll tell you, for those of you out there who have kids, kids kind of love them because, they can dip them, they're in their hands, they're fantastic. So I guess that is an Aussie staple, something that I grew up with, the Aussie sausage roll.
Very cool. So now we got to wait another 20 minutes.
Well, that's why I did cook one beforehand to kind of show you what they look like. I think, like that 20 minutes will go by pretty quick, I guess, so, I mean, let's chit chat. I think, does anyone get the opportunity to send in questions, or Bryson, do you have more?
There's, lots of comments in the chat. I don't know that any of them lead to any useful questions to you.
Oh my gosh, I haven't even looked at the chat, but
I don't have anything in terms of the sausage roll. It seems pretty self-explanatory. I did mine with tuxedo sesame seeds, so I got some of the white and black different color. I also did, I dusted mine in paprika. So it also has a little bit of that, it'll have that like reddish color with it too when it comes out. Yeah, I don't really have anything else other than.
Well, I think it's one of those things. Like I just presented you sausage rolls tonight, but another Aussie staple is of course the meat pie. If you've ever met an Australian, they will talk about going to the football, eating a meat pie. And meat pies are something that, don't quite exist here in the US. So I actually did a little bit of experimentation last week and made some meat pies. And meat pies are essentially ground beef done with a beef gravy. So not gravy, I think, as many of you would know it in terms of that crazy white gravy with sausage bits that you put on things. It's done with like a Gravox, so it's a dark meat gravy, a little bit of onion, and I actually use Texas muffin pans to make mini meat pies. I use the same kind of pastry that we have and, line the bottom of the muffin tins. I cook the ground beef with the gravy and the onions. Often I will put mushroom and additional onions in there, and then you sort of put the filling in, and then you put sort of a pastry top on there, pop them in the oven, same thing, very high temperature, 425 for around about 10 minutes, pull it back to 375 and then cook it for another 20 minutes. And again, a great kind of hand snack that all Aussies love.
So we do have meat pies. We have, we don't generally do it with beef, but we have chicken pot pie.
Yes.
Certainly we brought shepherd's pie from the English. And then from the Hispanic side, empanadas are essentially like ground meat in
I actually think empanadas may be the closest thing to an Aussie pie because they've got a full casing on them, underneath as well. Certainly when I was at the Australian Embassy and I was posted there, we would often have Friday night drinks, which were affectionately known as prayers. And some of the things that would go off the table quickest were the sausage rolls, the meat pies, and of course the lamb lollipops. So as many of you may know, Australians are, lovers of lamb. And summer brings barbecues, shrimps or prawns on the barbie, and lots of lamb. Actually tonight, after I get these out of the oven, I'll be going out to grill some lamb chops on the barbie to have with, for dinner tonight. It's one of the things that really reminds me of home. And funnily enough, I go to Costco, and Costco actually imports Australian lamb. So it's kind of good. Whenever I go to Costco, I always come home with some Aussie lamb, and we do it on the barbecue. So it's one of those things, I think, the meal that we cook tonight in terms of the sausage roll, the meat pie and lamb, there's some synonymous with Aussies. We love to do, those things on the barbecue. We love to eat them when we go out and watch our sports because, it's something you can hold in your hand while you hold your beer in the other hand. A bit like, I guess, Americans and hot dogs and beers. With Aussies, it's, a pie and a beer, or a sausage roll and a beer.
I was thinking about that with the beef broth that you soaked the bread in, that you don't have to just do beef broth. In fact, it'd be interesting to try it with your beer instead.
Yeah, that's actually interesting. I think the result, it's really just about moistening up.
You've got plenty of beer to pour.
Well, who hasn't had a Guinness pie? Same kind of thing, right? Like, Why wouldn't we introduce, maybe a Guinness sausage roll? Bryce and I might have to try that next week.
When I saw the because I actually soaked mine in with sourdough bread instead of white bread.
Mm-hmm.
not to give the eyebrow, but I don't do white bread. Because I was thinking about several things. One, I mean, it's kind of like when you make meatballs that you have the bread there to bind. And so meatballs, though, are egg to bind it with it. And so you could also just use breadcrumbs so that you're not just getting like a heavy meat. So it kind of like spreads it out some. And instead of beef broth, there are different things you could add to it. And I was thinking about beer or wine being a different way to mix it up.
Yeah, I actually think maybe some ground lamb with a little bit of red wine and rosemary and garlic. If you did that, maybe with some breadcrumbs for the binding, and put that in into the sausage roll, would actually be quite amazing. I mean, yeah, as we said, like, make it your own. It's a casing. Like, seriously, like, make that filling whatever you want, put your own spin on it, and then stick it in. Like, it might just mean you might need to adjust your timings a little bit, but I mean, that's the thing, right? Make it. That's what cooking's all about. Make it your own.
Well, just like where you were talking about how you made the vegetarian only approach to, I mean, because a sausage roll would no longer be a sausage roll if it was vegetarian only.
Yeah, I mean, that was actually quite good. And I think the mix that I used, it was a mix of beans and chickpeas. And by the time you put the vegetables in with it, it was very, very hard to tell that it wasn't a meat-based filling, which was kind of good, because at that point, you know, I was trying to get more vegetables into my diet. So it was a good way to do it and still feel good about eating it. But yeah, so, you know, it's one of those things. I didn't. Oh, you keep checking yours.
I'm hungry, and so I keep watching them, and I want to know what I could get about as soon as possible.
All right, I think we've probably got, you know, another 10 minutes at least, but
well, I got mine in before yours, so I got a few minute head start there. They're looking delicious. They smell like, even just the meat mixture had a really nice fragrance, so it really sparked my appetite. And so I just rotated them because I felt like I had to do something to maybe speed them up.
Well, I did tell you this was going to be a quick and easy recipe. You know, not too much detail, you know, just get it in. And I mean, you know, like, you know, a few Australians, we're all about getting to the end point. So, I mean, like, what else can I share with you about Australia? I guess here's a tidbit for you that many of you may not know. Australia has, you know, sort of 6 states, 3 territories. One of our largest states is Queensland. And I know here in the US, everyone thinks like Texas, it's one of our biggest states. But to give you a bit of an idea, Texas would fit 3 times inside the state of Queensland. So, you know, I always find that a bit of an interesting tidbit when people say, oh, I'm going to drive to Queensland, I'm going to see all of these things. And I'm kind of like, yeah, that's fantastic, because Queensland has fantastic things to offer. We've got the Great Barrier Reef. We've got, you know, Surfers Paradise. We have, you know, Brisbane. But, you know, when you kind of tell them it's 3 times the size of Texas, that's a lot of, you know, it's a lot of ground to cover. And I think, you know, like I've been here back in the US now for nearly 3 years. I was, you know, posted here with the Australian government from 2009 to 2012. And that was really, you know, where I fell in love with the US. I was located out in Arlington. I worked at the Pentagon. It was, you know, one of those things. I just really fell in love with the US people. I fell in love with the culture. And so when the opportunity arose for me to come back in 2019, I jumped at it. And, you know, a lot of people kind of say to me, what, you know, why did you leave Australia? And I think it's a thing. I'll always be Aussie. I'm, you know, Bryson, you know me, I'm very Australian. Whether it's my accent.
Really know what that means, actually.
Pardon?
What does that mean to be very Australian?
Well, I think, 1, my accent, my terminology. I think the very fact that I am very upfront with people in terms of do what you say, and
so being direct is an
carry out.
Australian
It's not so much
characteristic.
being direct, but like Aussies are very direct, and I think that's one of the things that actually does make Americans take a step back, but it actually also makes them appreciate some of the candidness that Australians bring, because I would certainly consider that we don't play games. We call a spade when it comes to things like that. So a lot of people kind of say to me, why would you leave Australia and come here? And look, to be really honest with you, there are a lot of similarities between Australians and Americans. A lot of similarities. You've got such a diverse culture here, with all of the states that you have. There's similarities, and I've traveled a lot through this country, and I've found those similarities, particularly, with people who live in the country, but yet again with people who are city dwellers as well. And it's certainly something that I've been afforded here, and I've actually really enjoyed, is that Americans seem to have, an affinity for Australians. Sometimes I wonder why the hell you like us.
Well, we had Outback Steakhouse kind of really like be the cultural flag, which is where most of us had our first Fosters. And then Crocodile Dundee. So the 80s were really the love affair with Australia. And I think it's, not to be mean, but it's kind of just sort of.
Well, after we lost Steve Irwin, let's face it, there wasn't a lot going for us.
If it's not about crocodiles, you've lost our interest. And we've got a lot of those in Florida. So it's kind of like,
It is, but I will say it's one of those things, certainly my accent has afforded me a lot of fantastic conversations with people in this country, because there are a lot of people out there who are still really interested in Australia. Everything about the country, about the people, obviously about all the crazy poisonous animals, and, everything in Australia seems to want to kill you. That's actually afforded me lots and lots of fantastic conversations, and I'll be forever grateful for that. I do travel quite a bit, whether it be with work or personally. I'm quite into, kayaking and hiking and snowboarding. So I do go to some kind of outback places. A lot of times when people hear the accent, they're like, oh my gosh, are you Australian? And thankfully, it's been very rarely that I've been asked if I've been British. So
I think most of us would have. Yeah, I think most of us would have that down. But yes, you clearly have a foreign accent. You do sometimes say some funny things, like you've done in this show. I picked up footy. Was the other one Morno, which
Mornos.
I guess, Mornos. Tradespeople.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those were a couple. I was just kind of like, all right, that's I guess a way. Texas is a miniature Australia. That's what Tony says.
Well, it's one of those things. I'm trying to align I bought my boyfriend an Australian dictionary for Christmas. And then when I found out that there weren't all of the things that I kind of knew, I started making edits to the book. So, he's been struggling with some of my, anachronisms, I guess. And some of my, terminology that I use. So now I'm just like, get the book out, make sure it's in there. But I think it is one of those things, I think you'd be guaranteed if you got an Aussie mate, we're always up for a beer and, always up for a bit of a good time and a laugh.
So mine are out of the oven, which means I can take a picture with you with yours pre-made.
Okay, fantastic.
This is how mine turned out.
Oh, they look good.
Get the microphone out of the way. Oh, that's hot. All right, I'm gonna have to do this with my left hand. Boom. All right, Michelle, happy Oz Day. And
Thank you.
the charity for folks to donate
is Tunnels to Towers. So please get on. Fantastic charity supporting veterans and survivors of the 9/11. So very easy to donate, something as small as $15 a month, which is barely 2 coffees. Great charity that helps those veterans pay off their mortgages and also helps provide housing to accommodate their disabilities.
All right. Well, share what you make at home, hashtag Unicorn Chef, and tell us, particularly since with sausage rolls, aka routail, we won't be able to see. Tell us what's in them. See you next week.
Thanks, everyone. Happy Australia Day.